Namaste and welcome to this exciting new episode of Sathology Debunking Mythology. Sat means truth, Logos means a study or science. Sathology means a science of truth or study of truth. Opposite of that is mythology, which means a science of fake lie or imagination or study of fake lie imagination. Now, we all know why mythology word was invented using a Sanskrit root. There is no such word myth existed before in Latin or English backgrounds. And I've researched it enough. It was designed for us because the Sanskritist Robert O'Neill and his favorite what do you call it fan Max Muller loved it. Robert O'Neill, if you do not know, some of you, he was a Christian missionary in the South India, in Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu. And after that, after many years after that, after 3 centuries after that, came the Max Muller. He called this person as the biggest Sanskrit scholar he had ever seen. So let us get started. India and the West. We have very good friend and an author, Chanchal Malviya. So welcome.
Namaste, Aditya.
Yeah. So Chanchal, why do you chose this topic, India and the West? What you wanted to compare?
See, Aditya, it's not a question of me comparing it. The comparison is all around. And had it not been so, we would not have been seeing a lot of conversions happening here in India. Right? So it is the environment around which is making this comparison, and probably our people who are impacted of this comparison, in fact, are becoming the losers. In a way, we are finding more and more people who should have been Bharatiya transforming to an Indian and then going ahead to become, trying to become an Englishman. So it's all happening around me, and that is the reason why I'm trying to compare what we are and what they are.
See, if you look at the history of colonial history, if you look, it was done for gold, glory, and God. It was the papal bulls. In the last papal bull was 1901, 1908, and till they do it, it's like a jihad. It's like a fatwa, exactly like a fatwa. In fact, the fatwa was copied over from the Christian denominations. It's a call to war. Like 1493 gave justification for European church to conquer South America. That was the papal bull over there. And then for India, the same papal bull was said that the Spanish are given the entire territory in the Asia Pacific, as if it belonged to them. And then the church line came in. The God, church, man has dominion over the earth. That's what they said. Now, these are all originating from there. That's why all these things are going on. And the second thing is inculturation and syncretism. Now, the language that you and I are speaking, I'm speaking for Americans, but you and I are speaking English. That itself is a sign of colonization. And Japanese, you will not hear. If you go to Japan, you'll see very difficult for them to speak English. I was shocked to see their foreign minister talking in English to a news channel. That means they are also going through the same thing. So if anyone says colonization has ended, he's lying. It's still going on. So let's start off with that, and I'll give you the entire forum for some time.
Yeah, you are right, Aditya. Basically, I must tell you that the sessions that I take, for teachers or for people who want to listen to me over here in India, I take always in Hindi. I do not, use English. Even when I was working in IBM or other companies, IT companies, as long as the team members used to be Indians, even in meetings and on for other purposes, I always used to use Hindi for communication. But however, we all know that we have American audience, English audience, You also are over there. So there is no harm in talking to them in their language, and that is why we are trying to talk in English. But however, language is one thing. We must understand what culture, what the topic that you and me choose together is culture, and how we can see culture of Bharat and the culture of the West. Are they, how do they differ, or what are the elements of culture that Bharat the voice from the into. Now, continuing to answer your first question, how I came into this, basically, I also was of the opinion, I say opinion, I didn't knew, but I was also of the opinion that all religions are same. They teach the same thing. We all know from where this particular concept came from, but it has ruled the mind of Indians that all religions teach peace. They teach the same thing, they take us to the same goal, and this is what the perception all around is. But the question kept triggering me, then what is the reason for hatred? What is the reason for invasion? What is the reason for religious war, riots, and all those things? If it teaches peace, and people on the other side, it means people who are more religious, they read the scriptures more than people who are not religious, and they become more and more hardliners. What is the reason? So it is this particular aspect which drove me to read various books like Quran, Bible, Dhampad, Guru Granth Sahib, Dasam Granth, or other few of other religions. And then when I read our scriptures, we know we do not have any one particular book that commands us. And in fact, no book commands us. And there is no one particular book which we can say that it is the last and only book that, that stands for our identity or religion or whatever we call it. So we have a lot of books. 18 Purans are there, Bhagavad Gita are there, Manusmriti, which is the most controversial over here in India, made a controversial book. So Manusmriti, different smritis are there. Shaddarshan is there, Mahabharata and Ramayana are there. There are so many books. What I found, the basic difference is that the idea of religion was there in all the religious books that came from outside India. But the moment we enter our country and the writings of our country, the idea of religion is not there at all. The whole world is seen as one community, and we know that this slogan Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is the slogan still held by India alone. In fact, the scriptures of India alone. So from there, I tried to find out what are the elements that makes the culture of India. What are those? Now, today, India is a different culture, or a different, it stands in a different position. So we cannot claim what is written in the scriptures is the same what we see today. However, say around 200 years ago, if you want to look at India and the scriptures, they go parallel to each other. And what I found, that it is spirituality. The modern term is spirituality. Our term is Adhyatma, and Adhyatma has the word itself carries a lot of meaning, but spirituality we can use for Adhyatma for our discussion. So it is spirituality that is the guiding philosophy of our culture, that is in the roots of our culture. Now, spirituality, it is not a belief system. It is like religions, in fact. It is not something written and people have to believe it. Spirituality is sitting on top of science, which means when the journey of science has ended, the idea of spirituality had started taking shape. And that is why we have Vedas and Vedants. Now, Vedants are Upanishads or spiritual studies that has started after Vedas, and Veda is Aparavidya. Aparavidya means it is all material sciences. And spirituality is Paravidya, which is spiritual sciences, what we call in today's language. So spirituality is the journey of spirituality starts from where science ends. And hence spirituality is founded on the plinth of science. And hence we see that most of the scientists who becomes advanced physicist or who understands this quantum physics, particle physics and all those things, they come near and near to our spiritual sciences, and they become philosophically one with what we we find in all our scriptures. And this particular spirituality is the foundation of Indian culture, Bharatiya culture. And we will quickly try to look into how Bharatiya culture is made. It is a very big topic, but I will try to cover as short as possible, in fact. So, out of spirituality, the basic questions come: what is the purpose of this life? This is what spirituality will ask you. Science will not ask you this question. Science will tell you what is this life. Science may go ahead to tell you how to live this life, but science cannot answer this question to you. What is the purpose of this life? This is a spiritual question. That means the why part of our life, why this life is there, is the root of all the foundations that are there in our country. And that journey, we all know that it leads to moksha. We'll try to understand what is moksha. In fact, the purpose of life is moksha, and how these two things are related, we'll see that. But presently we should understand that purpose of life is spirituality, and it further breaks down to structure of human life. If we understand why this life, what is the purpose of this life, then we will learn techniques to structure this life. And that structure is called 4 ashram. 4 ashram, we say brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha and sannyas ashram. Why this came? That is more important to understand. These are there. Most of the Indians know that these 4 ashrams are there. But how these ashrams were composed by the rishis is the fundamental question. It comes from the root of spirituality. If we understand the purpose of life, we'll structure the life to meet the purpose, and that is why these 4 ashram are there. The final one being sannyas, taking us towards moksha. And then comes standards of life. When we have structured the life, we have to live a life in a way that those standards, those structures are not disturbed. Those structures are maintained. And those standards are 16 sanskar, 16 sanskars. Medical science, if they study human anatomy, human biology and human behaviors, human growth, whatever they want to study, and if they want to standardize it, it will end up in establishing this 16 sanskar. And when this structure and standards are established, human behaviors have to be managed in a way that it doesn't disturb the purpose of life. Humor are there, they will behave. Actions will be there. Thoughts will be there. And they will interact with each other. But what should be the format? How humans should organize themselves? What should be the social organization? What is the structure of the social organization in which humans are going to behave? And that is 4 varnas. That is how 4 varnas came into being. And this all together, purpose of life, structure of life, standards of life, behaviors of life, all these are seeded in spirituality, and together as a composite we call it Sanskriti. Culture is not a direct meaning of Sanskriti. If we say culture, we will not understand what Sanskriti means. But if we analyze what is Sanskriti, it is composed of 2 things. One, sanskar, that is the value system, and Sanskrit, that is the vocabulary. Vocabulary is the philosophical part of Sanskriti, because it is the words. It comes from your thoughts, or it is even composes your thoughts. And sanskar, value system, is something that drives your actions. So there is a behavioral part of it. There is a philosophical part of it. So Sanskrit, we all know, is the only language, in my language, in my terminology, I would say Sanskrit is the only scientific language of this world. When I say scientific, it means it has not been created by humans. It has been invented, discovered, or found by humans, which it further means that the vibrations were already there in the air or in creation. And it is humans who found those vibrations and who created those Varnamala of Sanskrit, which started taking shape as per the rules of the nature, in fact, state shape of words and sentences or Sanskrit language. That is how Sanskrit became. We'll not go into details of this. There is a full science of how Sanskrit is nothing but it's the finding of vibrations in the universe or inside our body or outside our body. So that is how Sanskrit language got composed of. So it is a vocabulary which is scientific vocabulary. It is not a, when we say human created vocabulary, when it becomes an artificial a language created by us. And when we create it, there will be lots of gaps in it. And that is why the fundamental philosophical difference between Bharat and the rest of the world is there because of this particular language. Sanskrit being a language of creation and rest of the languages being a language created by humans, there are gaps in those languages, and there is no gap in Sanskrit. It is pure nature, and hence whatever output that will come from Sanskrit will not be against nature. It will not be artificial. It will not create or it will not damage the existence as a whole, in fact. So the purpose of vocabulary and this value system both was to create an ego-free society, ego-free human being, ego-free environment. This was the purpose, or this is the idea of spirituality in our Bharatiya culture. And on the contrary, on the Western side, it is an ego-centric system. It is not an ego-free system. We will come into that when we go into details of this. But let's come and briefly see what is this vocabulary, how this philosophical part is ego-free system. To understand this, we may have to go a bit into the creational concept of our spiritual scriptures. The creational concept is that is rooted in the word Maya. We all know the word Maya. We do not understand the word Maya. Maya is not illusion, as it is being projected or it is being colloquially now understood by people or used by people. Maya is a creational concept. From where does it come? How does it come? If we go into a deeper philosophy of science, where space and time and the idea of duality, if we discuss this, the output of all these three is Maya. Space means it's all vibrations. What we call in our scriptures or in our Sanskriti or our culture is Om. Om is all vibrations, which is the root of creation and which is still percolated in every aspect of creation. It is that vibration. And out of Om is the Kal Purush, that is time, space, and then time. And after this came Purush and Prakriti, the duality. Purush and Prakriti. Now here I'm again, because we may not touch the topic, I must point out here that Prakriti and Purush are kept parallel in our culture. Parallel in the sense, feminine and masculine, it is not a masculine driven society. They are sitting parallel in the idea of creation, in the idea of sustenance, in the idea of running the world, in the idea of living in this world. They are parallel to each other. However, philosophically, the Prakriti has got a dominance on the Purush, because Prakriti, from Sanskrit vocabulary point of view, Prakriti is also called Pradhan. Pradhan means it has a higher priority, or it is at a higher level. Prakriti means Pradhan. So this is a very technical term, and out of Prakriti and Purush, what is born is called Maya. Maya, in the sense, it is going downwards towards creation. These are all, from all to Maya, or even to Ahankar. From Maya, Ahankar is born. Even till Ahankar, it is all vibrations. It is the creation. It is not an atomic world till now. It is all vibrations that is happening. And hence, Maya is a very technical term. And unless we understand Maya, unless we understand what is Om, unless we understand what is Prakriti and Purush, and unless we understand the attributes of Maya, that is Triguna, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, our philosophical understanding or our philosophical thoughts will not be composed of what it should be. And this is what has happened to the whole country, whole India, or all the Indians today. Their philosophical thoughts, these concepts are not there in their mind, and hence they are not wholly a part of the Sanskriti which they used to be around 200 years ago. Around 200 years, people used to understand this: what is Om, what is Pranav, what is Kal Purush, what is Prakriti, what is Maya, what is Ahankar, what is Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. They all used to practically use it. Even in villages, the most illiterate person used to understand these things, because this was there. These words were there philosophically in in the minds of people, and it used to be traditionally taught to generations. So these are the composing elements. Now, when we say Maya, now let's understand how it makes us ego free. After Maya, Ahankar comes, ego comes, and after ego, forms starts taking shape. So what is Ahankar? Ahankar is Aham Akar, that is my shape, is Ahankar. Where from it comes, it's Maya. So what does our philosophy say? If I understand Maya, what does our philosophy say? Maya se mukta ho jao. You become gunatit, that means sattva, rajas, Maya in the sense sattva, rajas, tamas. You free yourself from these three aspects. You become gunatit. The three guns, you become, separate yourself from that. Gita also says all these philosophies. But this is the core idea. This is the core philosophy. Means that at the philosophical level, it says you have to be ego free. Now comes the behavioral part. Once the philosophical part sets certain things in our mind, it makes a mindset, it makes an attitude of the mass that you have to be ego free because of these are the conditions. This is how we have come into being, and all those things. Then comes the how we set the behavioral part, and that behavioral part will reflect the same ego free situation or the same ego free actions. In fact, it should reflect, and that is how it used to be there in our country. We will see that sanskar part now. We saw Sanskrit part. These are all rooted in Sanskrit. Now we'll see the sanskar part. No? Together they compose and make it a Sanskriti. The sanskar part is the value system. How it is ego free. What are our value systems? Or in fact, we can divide our value systems into 2-3 parts. One is how, when we meet persons, how we greet them, how we treat them, how we celebrate, how we work with each other. Our value systems will reflect over there. And let us take an example. Let us start from how we greet and how we celebrate or treat people. So when we say greetings, the world knows that the greeting of Bharat is Namaste. And this is one of my favorite topics. I generally keep telling people that it is one single thing that we have left and we are disconnected from our culture. Our greeting is Namaste. Namah Astute. Means, मैं आपको नमन करता हूं, means I bow down before you. Why do I do that? This is, now we have to understand how it happens, how Namaste happens. We all know that when we say good morning, it doesn't mean Namaste. Good morning doesn't mean I'm bowing before you. Namaste means, or pranam means, I'm touching your feet. I'm bowing down before you. What happens out of it is the person before whom you have bowed down, he has given away his ego. He is all there to bless you, or he is all there to bow in a similar fashion to you. So by saying Namaste, the idea of ego is not there. It is taken care of. And if the person on the other side is there, you are taking the blessings. But on the other side, does it happen in good morning? When I say good morning, do I touch the feet of elders? I do not. And hence I say it is good morning which has killed our culture. We must come back to pranam and namaste. Our children, our generations must come back to this, their own vocabulary. So now let's understand how this namaste, why this namaste happens. Why do it? Because as I told you, spirituality is always answering the question, why? Why namaste? So it happens because we are considered, we will not go into that particular science of Atma and Paramatma, relation of Atma and Paramatma, although those are composing elements of our culture, in fact. But having assumed that our Atma is a part of Paramatma and they are essentially one, but the realizations are different, in fact, and hence we are here as human beings. So this Atma is what is composing me, or is the consciousness in me, and hence, since it is part of that Paramatma, this Atma has the essence of divinity in it. And when it is divine, it means it must be respected. And to ensure that it is respected, the namaste is followed by people. Our rishis, established the standard of nomenclature also. So you see, on one side, all our names are so meaningful. They're not meaningless like the West. You won't find dictionary meaning of Robert, Thomas, and all these names. But you'll find that our names have very deep-rooted meanings right in the dictionary of Sanskrit. And with those meaning, the rishis, what they did, they put this title as Shri before that. The West used Mr. Mr. means he is a person, he is a man. And there is Mr., Mrs., Miss, and all this. But in our cultural context, we use Shri. Shri is what it is denoted to the spiritual aspect. I would not go into details of Lakshmi and Vishnu and all those things because it will complicate the topic. But it is the spiritual aspect. It is the aspect of Paramatma. So it is Shri. So if I use my name or Aditya's name, it is Shri Aditya. Aditya is the name of sun who is enlightening this world. That is the meaning of Aditya. Aditya has a very deep meaning. But if I put Shri, it means this Aditya is a divine person, and hence I am supposed to do Namaste to Aditya. This is how the idea of Namaste got composed, and this is how it got implemented. And it was so easy for us to break this boundary and start using good morning and Mr. And the whole aspect of living with elders. Other ideas comes like seva for elders, Acharyopasnam, Vridhyop seva. Doing seva is not service. Service, the Western idea of service is, either you are paid or you are enslaved. Then you serve, or you have pity on someone. Then you do this service. But our idea is not of service or seva is not that. Our idea of seva is duty. We are by character, by nature, by culture, we all are in the job of seva. And it starts right at our home, towards our elders, towards our guru. So seva is like upasana. It is like worship over here. It is in the characters of Indians. So that is seva. But the moment we bring English vocabulary over here and start using service, it becomes a social service, which means it is for the downtrodden, out of pity you are doing, or if somebody is paying you, you are in service. It has a completely different implementation and implications than seva. And that is why I say that we must use our vocabulary if we want to keep our behavioral part of culture intact. We must use Namaste, we must use Shri before our names, we must use seva, we must use upasana, puja, all these words that are there, we must use them as it is. There is no counter words in any other languages of the world for these things. So if we want to keep intact our culture, we have to use these words. Now going ahead, if we see the celebration part of our value system, how it has been made ego free, and how the Western part is not ego free, it is egocentric. Good morning is egocentric. I'm not bowing, I'm just wishing. But namaste is ego free. So similarly, if we come to the celebrations part, we can you can see anniversary. So it's my anniversary. I may invite you because I want to celebrate. So ego is the idea of I and my. We call it ahanta and mamta in our language. Ahanta means I, ahankar, and mamta means my, mine. All that is mine. So it is my anniversary, and hence I celebrate it. And you should celebrate it. If you don't come, probably I don't. There is no good rapport between you and me. But in our country, now what is anniversary? It is a marriage celebration. In our country, marriage celebration, how it is celebrated? Vat Savitri, Karwa Chauth, and there are other names in other languages, in fact. So is it my anniversary over there? It is not so. Everyone's anniversary. So how it is rooted in a symbol also, that how this relation should be. What Savitri says, this relation should be like a Vat Vriksh, which never dies. So the life of this relationship is eternal. And this celebration, all the women, all the men has equal stake on this celebration. It is a social celebration. It is not a personal celebration. Although it is a marriage celebration. So what happens when it becomes a social celebration? The whole celebration becomes ego-free. It is no more egocentric. It is no more my only. Similarly, there is the idea of auspiciousness to start something is also part of the value system. You see how we start our life. There is a sanskar called Garbha Sanskar. What does it mean? It means that if the child is coming, it should come with right purpose. It should come with right, it should come in right way. If I am a person completely, in lust with a woman, the child which will come will be a lusty child, because that is how I have started the life of another person. But if I am pure at heart, if the other woman is also pure at heart, if we are enjoying a relation which is pure in nature, the child which is going to come is going to be pure. And hence, to ensure that the child is, the generation that is coming is pure at heart and in nature and in their character, we do it auspiciously by celebrating this Garbha Sanskar. So whenever we are starting something, there is an idea of auspiciousness to it. Be it Happy New Year in forms of Gudi Padwa or the very birth of a human being. We all know the Gudi Padwa, we started at Brahma Muhurt, followed by Amrit Vela, and then there are other Muhurt. So we respect time, how we started. We get fresh. We keep our mind, purified from the idea that today is New Year and we have to do all this puja and we have to, make sure that we started very auspiciously. But how do you start a Happy New Year? How do the West? What have the West taught to the world, which Indians are also doing? You start it right at the middle of night, which you call a new day or new year. It is the middle of night. And I don't have to tell you the story how it starts. But that is surely not auspicious start of a new year. This is the difference between West and... Now, then you see this value system goes ahead to establish gratitude also. Now, you see all these things. Social celebration, it is ego-free. Auspicious start, it will make you ego-free. Because the moment ego comes in, auspiciousness will, it will side away. And then comes gratitude. Gratitude is also about getting ego-free. And how it is implemented, you call Gau as Mata, you call Ganga as Mata. You call Dharti as Mata. Why? They are all nurturing you. You call Prakriti as Mata. They are all engaged in nurturing you as your own biological mother. Now again, mother is an English word. Mata is it comes from Sanskrit vocabulary. And hence, the moment you say Mata, your perception, your philosophy is about Gau, not only your biological mother, but Gau, Dharti, Ganga, Prakriti, other women. We used to say, there is an old man living in my society, and when he comes down in the evening for a walk, generally my children plays in the parking area, and my daughter is, 7 to 8 years old. She was when she was 7 to 8 years old. Whenever he used to come, he say, "Ma pranam." He used to say my daughter Ma, and he used to do pranam. He used to bow the old man. This was happening even today, because that old man came from village. He was not brought up in city area, and he held the culture of being spiritual, living spiritual life. So there is a gratitude for this life to the nature, and that is why we do not kill animals. This culture has not taught us to kill. If you read Mahabharata and other scriptures, this culture has always prohibited you from killing animals or living upon animals, because we express our gratitude towards the whole creation. And that is why this philosophy will not go into the details, but this philosophy leads you to conclude that this whole creation is what you call as the shape of God. This is what is God. In you, in me, in everything is God, in fact, a form of God. And hence we don't need to believe on a false God whom you don't know, and whom you can never know. What you see, what you with whom you live, how you live, all those things define what is God around you. And this is a very practical aspect of spirituality that has helped this country to come up to a civilization which we called as Arya, or probably it was the only civilization which was actually civilized, which has both sciences and spirituality working together. I would like to stop over here, and Aditya, maybe you can, give it a turn.
No, you put it so well and very passionate. I like that. The you touched upon important aspects on all kinds of racial and other aspects you touched upon. The one principal thing we missed out, that it is part of my new book, so I'm pretty more educated than last time because I've been working on my new book. The foundation, if you look at the colonial history of every part of the world, not just India. Now, India is still the country which has majority of non-Abrahamic people. But if you look at the colonial history of other lands, they have been completely overrun. And now the people from other lands, natives of other lands, look forward to India to help them. One such great personality who really helped foreigners more than India is Mahatma Gandhi. Like Mahatma Gandhi inspired revolution in North America, South Africa, and also all the African nations mostly followed his example. But the real freedom to colonial lands did not come until the Europeans were out of cash after the World War II. Okay, that's where the actual freedom movement started, because they did not have money to manage. Very cleverly, they created United Nations, they created British Commonwealth, they created all the institutions to still control the ex-colonies. And again, the world was fooled. Natives of all the world were fooled, including India. And we regularly go out to the Jamboree and circus in United Nations and speak on it. Tell me, no international body has ever questioned the Christian impact on Europe itself. What the church did in Europe is worse than what they did in India. Okay, what the church did in US to Native Americans,
century, right?
and Native Americans is not done Like, it's unthinkable what they have done. Still, they are
Correct, correct.
most of the Indians do not know that most of the Native Americans have difficulty to vote till date. So they conquered this land and gave them a citizenship in 1924, that you are an American citizen now. So it's like that they have done. And in the UK, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, what has happened to Romani people is unthinkable, unthinkable. But still, when they come to India, they have the right to tell about human rights. They have the right, they have the audacity to tell Indians about caste system, which is again a European problem. So we are actually not countering them. I think the first attempt we are doing is by inventing the word Sathology, just saying that we are not mythology, we are Sathology. So you are mythology, because there is no history of Jesus ever existing. There is no history of, if Jesus did not exist, Moses did not exist, then how did Muhammad saw the dream of Jesus and Muhammad, Jesus and Moses? They did not exist, both of them. It's been widely acknowledged by American scholars and Middle Eastern scholars who were hounded to be killed. So now this lie is being spread in India, and the strategy is inculturation. That is again a papal bull. Papal bull. Papal bull is like what do you call it? Jihad fatwa. It says that in adopt the strategies and traditions till you convert. So they first attack the elites. But this is all history. This is all history. Why, if we are not making a correction now, why are not we using the same strategy to go after the elites first and the influential people, like all the Khans of Bollywood, and make them accept our culture through logic, reasoning, and whatever is needed? So tell me, where, instead of complaining, why not taking an action?
So you are right, Aditya. Perfectly right. In fact, people who have understood our culture, who have understood that how scientific it is or how spiritual it is, and it is the only culture which can save humanity on earth. In fact, those who have understood, they should have gone ahead to ensure that it is put in education, it is put in cinemas or TV serials in right perspective. In fact, and people are educated on these ideas so that they do not take the route of tamas or riots and all those things which we call anti-human uh, in a way, which comes from their religions. In fact, you know which are rooted in their idea of religion. The very hatred and conversion, all these are basic output of those things. Now, from as a team over here had been always trying to do whatever we can do, and we are trying to implement these ideas in education. As I told you, I'm working with the board, and we are trying to compose curriculum which can help generation next to learn all these things, so that they have a clear mindset about the idea of God, and they cannot be cheated on this unseen God and unseen idea of believers and non-believers and all those rubbish and all. So we have to make sure that generation next is their brain is equipped of our cultural ideas. So that is what I am trying to do. So I have found that trying to teach these adults is something very difficult task, which probably Ram and Krishna also failed to do as a whole. In fact, they could not convert Duryodhan or but okay, Duryodhan and Ravan are extreme cases. But from mass perspective, there should have been attempt to tell them or to teach them or get them they help them unlearn the ideas or beliefs that they are carrying.
There is so little documentation on what Mahatma Gandhi spoke about Hindus. He said Hinduism is my principal religion, and he also said others should respect it. But if you look at the British version on, if you look at the Hindus and the, when you talk about the West, people have to just remove all the misconceptions now. The West means Catholics or Christians. That's it. West is that. Otherwise, why will Australia be called the West, or New Zealand be called the West? Okay, the West means the Christian world. Period. I live in the West, but the I am recognized as an Indian. I always tell I'm a 100% gold standard Indian. I may have a different passport, but still I'm an Indian. The European settlers will never recognize Native American or an Indian or an Asian as American. Like when they often ask me, "What is your nationality?" So I have to ask them back, "What is yours?" Because you're not native of this land. Native Americans are the natives of this land. You have occupied this land. So the question which I'm trying to say is that why are we so quiet? We are not putting any logic or reasoning, or we are not questioning anyone. You see, the sign of an intelligent man or intelligent culture is they question. You have heard it many times. The quality of questions determines the wisdom of a person, right? We have seen that. We encourage questions. If you go to any Western church or university, you cannot question. Cannot question. The first time in the history of United States, the whites have been challenged with the word white supremacist and critical race theory, which I am a big supporter of it, by the way. So because it comes from years of destruction of Native American cultures. So why are we not questioning? What are we lacking?
No, definitely. I mean, we are lacking education. We are lacking money, which should drive, which should be driven by our dharma, not money driving dharma, but
Let
money
me
which should be
let me
driven
interrupt
by
you.
our
Let
dharma.
me. I never
Uh,
interrupt people. Let me interrupt you here. I
uh,
the money, when you say the Europe was dying because of famines and diseases, when they started the colonization, they started sending the armies. They were dying literally. They had to ship their sick people out to South America. You know the history after 1492. Okay, so money is the logic given by a person who doesn't want to act. Dirgha Sutri, procrastinator. Most important wars in the world which have changed the world have been fought by people who had no money. And respectfully, I give Muhammad as an example, who fought against the Meccans. Okay, so now, my point is, my question to you is, when when the Hindus are claiming that they're so much superiority, but we are not questioning. We are superior, but we're not questioning anything. We're just listening, and we are giving. Money is not there, resources are not there. Believe, I live in this country, even though it may be the richest country of the planet, but there is no money for the common man. Government doesn't fund everything. It's a highly private country. The government is, in fact, will be running out of funds again. So the money thing is out. Most of these people were driven by their faith. Hindus have not developed conviction that every person should become a Hindu first. That missionary zeal, which Bhagavad Gita talks in 18.68, 69, and 70. We have not read our Gita. Krishna says in Gita, one who tells this supreme secret to others is very dear to me. We don't want to become dear to Krishna or even to Bhagavad Gita or loyal. Some people may not like Krishna. Maybe Shiva. Shiva also wants to do the same thing. Okay. So tell me why is that?
no, you're right. Our people are not getting educated on our ideas. Out from our education, and in fact, it is being taught negatively in education. So the basic foundations, where our perceptions, where our ideologies, where our emotions are getting shaped at that particular point of time, they are coining very wrong ideas about our own identity, and at the same time they are making sure that we do not go ahead to read and verify or read or make it part of our life. So we have been completely disconnected through different instruments, political instruments, or bureaucratic instruments. I told money because there are temples, there are say sadhus or saints or whatever we call them, swamis, who are holding a lot of money. But you believe me, I have talked to them, and when I talked to them and said that these ideas has to be implemented in the schools run by them, they backed out. They wanted to make it a secular school. Even people who are swami, they are living upon the money of of the beliefs of the people who are revering them on the idea of Hinduism. So they have backed out. No, if unless these things change, common people, the generation next, how will they learn about our culture? Who will tell them? who will drive them to this particular point, that they know what our culture was, what is God, what is spirituality, what is life, how the life should be lived, what are the standards of life, and all these ideas that I talked about, that I understood from our scriptures and to an extent from history. Who will tell them is the most important question. Unless we take a stand that, okay, here is a generation which doesn't know anything, but we must make sure that generation next which is coming up, we have to ensure that they get all this information right in their mind, so that they are able to protect this country, or face the world, or help the world live a longer life. I see education is the only key.
You're right. Education is the only key, and I hope we all work together, all of us doing the same thing, to spread this education and challenge the mythological mindset, which is the bane of Indian. Indians have better culture, but there's an American saying, Native American saying, "The duck which quacks the loudest gets the cracker." Very, very commonly put. We have not started quacking enough. We need to speak louder, tell others, and every year there is a council in Vatican on how to convert more new souls to Christian. But there is no such organized thing happening amongst the Hindus, amongst thing happening with the Buddhists. So these are the biggest targets of these missionaries: Buddhists, Hindus, anywhere there are large indigenous populations. And believe me, even today the same process is going on for the rest of the remaining Native Americans, Native South Americans, Native Asians, and all parts of the world. You have to add anything to that?
No, you are right. And we Indians, I think you are already doing a great job, sitting right in the Western world and trying to tell them what India is, what Bharat is, what spirituality is, what Adhyatm is, and how this world can live a longer life. You are trying to do that job. So people who are outside this country have to do a job. People who are inside this country have to sustain this culture, so that when they hear all these things outside, they are able to come over here and experience it. That is the most important part, which is not happening. People over here, they are not working the way they should work. I feel people who are outside India, they are working a lot on these things. Many people are working, not all, if not all, many people are working, and they are trying to influence on the Western mind. And I think because of that, yoga, Ayurveda, all these things have found so much space in the world, in fact. But it's not happening in this country, and we have to make sure that when they come to look at these things here, they actually experience it. And it will happen only if we educate the generation next.
Thank you so much, Anchal, for coming on the show and helping, and for this wonderful discussion. The title is apt: India and the West. It should be different: India and the Abrahamic West. Okay.
Yeah,
I'll stop here, and thank you so much for coming on the show. And for viewers who have watched this, do let us know your feedback and also comment on it. Namaste.
Thank you, Aditya. Thank you to all of your viewers.